Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, good afternoon, and welcome to Bigfoot and Company. This is Dr. John. It's tax day, April the 15th, but we've all got our stuff in the mail, don't we? I'm not asking. Don't ask, don't tell on that one. Anyway, happy April the 15th, and we got a spectacular show with us today. First of all, I want to say hi to my co-host, Matthew Delph. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad you're here as well. It's been an exciting couple of days for me. We ran a Comic-Con in Summerville, South Carolina. That was fun. And we're coming up to the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, where you are one of the featured speakers. That's going to be in Clayton, Georgia. I keep wanting to say that, April 26th, 27th, and tours on the 28th. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody check it out. The last few tickets remain, so grab them while you can. So look forward to having you down there next week, Matt. It's going to be a lot of fun as we go hunting Bigfoot. Who knows? Who knows what we'll find out? But anyway, glad to have you here with us today. We have a very special guest. She's very special because, first of all, she's talented, she's exciting, and she knows a lot about UFOs and Bigfoot, and she's a friend of ours, and that's what makes it extra special. Greetings, Angelia Sheer. She is the founder of Parasheer Research, and she is also the executive director of Tennessee MUFON, and she comes from the Nashville area. How you doing today, Angelia?
Hey, guys. With that kind of introduction, you know you're going to not get rid of me, right? So I really appreciate it. I was looking forward to talking to you guys. I couldn't wait till today.
Good. We're glad to have you here. You've done our mutual friend John Dixon introduced us, and you have got such a great take on exploring the world of UFO sightings. And we've talked at length about this. It's just so much fun to hear you talk about it, and you're very active. You're active enough to be the executive director of Tennessee MUFON, which I know that takes a lot of your time, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, John, but I have been obsessed with UFOs probably since I was about 4 years old or 5 years old. Believe it or not, I say God made me to be UFO girl, and we don't know why, but I'm honored every single day to talk to my witnesses and share my cases. They say, Ange, you do this, you don't do this for money, what do you get out of it? And I thought, you know what I get out of it? I get to have great friends like you two, and especially all my witnesses have become so many of my friends and some colleagues. So, you know what? I'm excited every single day. And I want to say something to you and Matt. You guys, I was strictly on the UFO circuit. And about a year ago, I guess it's been almost a year ago now, I met you guys, and, you invited me to come, to some of the Bigfoot events. And at first I was like, oh, my gosh, I'm a UFO girl. And, you guys were so unselfish. You said, we don't care. We just want you on. Well, me being me, I'm still reading 2 or 3 books a week for 30 years. And I did have crossover cases, meaning, I had UFO events that included other strange cryptid sightings. And I had, I would say probably less than 10% of my cases, but they still kept showing up. So after I met you guys, I went, you know what, I got to really buckle down and do my research. And it was interesting how all this works, because about 3 years ago, I read so much I had exhausted all the main UFO literature. And so I thought, I'm bored. So I got into the cryptid stuff. And guys, the first thing I read was Jeff Meldrum's book, which just blew me away. And then I just tore through everything else I could find, and I thought, oh, my God, there's just really, something to this. The general public doesn't realize that, when you read case after case, and just like in my research, I've probably interviewed 2,500 people at this point, and that means weeding out, that 2,500 is weeding out hoaxes, people that are just trying to get attention, or people that have maybe psychological issues, that kind of thing. So as I started to tear through the literature, oh my goodness, I can't even tell you, what I've learned. And I think you guys are really I'm going to tease the audience. I've probably worked 60 hours here, creating my PowerPoint, my lecture for the event coming up. because I really think I brought some information forward that I think most people don't realize, and I think it's going to blow people away.
That's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to it because as I go around, I've got a couple of talks on Bigfoot, and I want to integrate some of the UFO stuff in that because a lot of the Bigfoot community don't really focus on that. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your talk just because I want to learn. And I think that's an important thing. We've got a lot of really good folks coming along at that conference that we can learn from, and I think that's the most important thing. And the fun thing is to get to know the folks and really learn. Do you want to? You have really done so many cases and everything. Would you like to just start and tell us a couple of your cases that have involved UFOs, and we can enjoy listening to it?
And you know, I wanted Matt. You know, I asked Matt over there as I was trying to design my new lecture and also to try to educate myself. You know, I respect Matt so much and all the research that he's done over the years. And I asked him if he was familiar with Stan Gordon's work, and he told me no. Well, I thought that was interesting because the work of Stan Gordon happened back in the 70s, and he is a respected UFO researcher. And so I went back into the case files, and that's what I've been working on for the last probably year, looking at that stuff, and it was amazing. It was amazing what happened in the 70s. And the thing that initiated it all, there was a crash in Kecksburg. Are you guys familiar with that?
No.
Okay, on the evening of December 9th, around 1965, a huge fireball was tracked across the U.S. It was tracked over Ontario, Detroit, Michigan, Canada, and it ended up crashing in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And
Kecksburg, yes.
Yeah, and it seems that from that point on, that was almost like the herald of I didn't even realize, and I've been the UFO girl, of incredible cases that just erupted after that point. I mean, and even after the Kecksburg sighting, the military was brought into the area immediately. Areas were cordoned off. There was newspaper articles written about it. There were multiple witnesses. There were just strange things going on. You know, the final word, the Army said they didn't find anything, but nobody believes that because, you know, a lot of people saw, flatbed trucks that were covered, one of them that carried something off. They had people in, radiation suits around testing the area. At one point, it was even found out that they paid some young boys to go around telling people that it was nothing and just to go away, which I thought was, pretty interesting. So, as time goes by and we're all focused, into what's going on, current events, sometimes we forget, what's happened in the past. And it's really important to go back and look at some of these things because you can start to see patterns that erupt. And what was so interesting when we all went down to listen to Lyle Blackburn down at Expedition Bigfoot, and I read, I got his book and read it. It was amazing that he went back and even in the area that he, in Missouri that he was doing his research, his sightings, a lot of them in that book started in the early 70s. And I thought, what is going on here? And then, again, I mentioned Stan Gordon and his phenomenal work, Silent Invasion. It's called the Pennsylvania UFO Bigfoot Casebook. I mean, there were unbelievable sightings that started happening. These people started going crazy. And it started from 1973 to 1974. And during that time, you guys would not believe what happened to that community up there. I mean, Stan Gordon really, I hope to meet him one day. I really have to take my hat off to him. He developed a team. He was a very young man. I think he was in his teens when he started this. He actually created a system where the law enforcement of the area who cooperated with him, they thought so much of him, could actually call him and he could deploy a team immediately to go investigate any of these sightings. So after that Kecksburg incident in the late 60s, around 1973 and 1974, a huge rash of things started happening in that Pennsylvania area. And some of them started, and, I'll just tease everybody. I don't want to give my whole lecture away, but, I chose cases that actually, had people that would not normally come forward to testify about what they were seeing, like police officers. And beginning, probably early 73, people started seeing cryptids. They started seeing classic Bigfoot, hiding in the woods, red glowing eyes. And, this town, these little towns really started to go crazy over there. It was really, really amazing. And, during this time, the sightings were interspersed with UFO sightings and anomalous lights like orbs, that kind of thing. An example was on like August 14th, 1973, a police officer, was so unsettled. He was out on patrol in a wooded area, and he looked over and he saw these glowing, at first he thought they were lights, but then he realized it was some kind of eye shine, and they were connected to a shape that was at least 8 feet tall. He said, at first the officer was reluctant to share the sighting, but he was certain that he experienced something extraordinary, so he actually came in and reported it. And so those are the kind of things that started happening in this small area, and it was incredible. And I thought it was, Matt, it was interesting that, Lyle Blackburn went back and, of course, he was describing the things down in the South that were happening in that 1970s area. So I don't know what happened, guys, in the 70s there, but something was going on.
Well, do you know if there was any UFO activity around, like, Falk, Arkansas or anything like that whenever they had that huge outbreak of all the sightings and stuff back in the 70s?
Like, are you talking about, like in Lyle?
Yeah, like where, like down there in Texas.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say around Texarkana, like, okay, they had a rash of the, of course, the Boggy Creek monster, the Falk monster, the Bigfoot down in that area. During that time frame, do you know of any UFO cases that happened before then or during that time, back in the 70s?
Well, I will make a note on that, and, off the top of my head, and I don't want to speak about that general area. You and I will talk after the show. I'll get the general area and I'll do a check. But you know what? I'm going to just speak from experience, 40 years. I'll bet you anything there were. Because even in Lyle Blackburn's recent book, Momo, I went through the whole thing and delineated the cases that people saw UFOs or anomalous lights. And it was a high percentage of his cases. It's infected with this stuff. It's incredible. When I went back and actually, doing my research here, just it was kind of lengthy because I've had to really dig through things. Guys, listen, for me to say that I was shocked. Do you know, in a year's time in Pennsylvania, in that area, they had over 276 reported sightings of Bigfoot and UFO or some kind of combination. That's unbelievable, 276. And this town was in a frenzy. When I tell you in a frenzy, the police departments were really getting upset. All the officers were carrying high-powered rifles. And they were afraid somebody was going to get shot because people were, so freaked out about it. And, guys, you got to remember, this is back in the 70s when people didn't talk about this. So there was something really extraordinary going on. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Matt. Remind me about it. I'll put it on my list, to check out. And, I'll let you guys know in a future show on that specific area.
Great. Excellent.
All right. I was just thinking, I actually have a friend from Kecksburg, and I remember he talked about that with me one time. I'll see if I can track him down and see if I can get you an interview with him. He's
that
quite
would be awesome. Yeah.
Well, what makes him even more interesting is he was the webmaster for about 10 years at the Edgar Cayce Center. the sleeping prophet up there in Virginia Beach, and that's how I met him.
Absolutely.
Super guy. And I will see if I can track him down. I mean, I think I still host their website, frankly, and I'll track Bob down and see because I remember we talked about that. Yeah.
Really? Well, who I'd love is to track down. If and John, you probably have more pull than I do, but I would love to talk to Stan Gordon. I don't know if he's totally retired now or not, but for me to get on the radio and say that, I really respected someone after reading his book, Silent Invasion, he is the creme de la creme. I mean, he did some excellent work. I was astounded. A true boots-on-the-ground investigator. If anybody out there hasn't read that book called Silent Invasion by Stan Gordon, that should be one of your primers because oh, my goodness. I knew there was stuff out there, but I did not realize how much and how detailed. I mean, guys, literally, he was so credible that he was patched into the local police department, and when they got a weird call, they would literally call him over his little CB radio or whatever, and he would, he had gotten a team of, like, geologists, I don't know, all these, respected people, and they would say, hey, something's going on. They looked up to him so much, and, he would go out and check on it. And this is why this work, I think, is so important because, he, just like I do in my research, sometimes we can't do it. But, we urge witnesses that when they have these sightings to please call us as soon as possible so we can try to get out and do our interviews and do our investigations, as soon as possible. What the general public doesn't realize as investigators, we found markers that if we can get out to witnesses sometimes within 48 hours, we can find marks on their bodies that fluoresce under a black light sometime that fades after 48 hours. But I have seen that, and it's really important for us to get out there as soon as possible, to take a look at these cases. And that's what he did. I mean, if anybody wants to look at the Bigfoot stuff, it's something that's very well documented across the board with law enforcement. Man, this is a primer to look at because, I mean, I was blown away. I couldn't stop reading the book. It was awesome. So my research was actually fun. And then, of course, Lyle's work, great too, well documented. He boots on the ground. He goes out and talks to people. So, I was shocked. The next little thing I wanted to tell you about that we're going to jump to August the 29th, 1973. I just want to give you a little sample. Whole groups of people on the highway see this huge boomerang-shaped UFO, and it was witnessed by multiple, witnesses. And, during that evening, the wife of a prominent doctor in the neighborhood, she saw the object. It moved off. At the time that she saw it, listen to this, she noted an odd sulfur smell. Imagine that. Well, later that evening, they're all in their house. It's August, it's warm, and all of a sudden they hear gunshots. And they're like, what? They must have been in a little prominent neighborhood because her neighbor, was a doctor also. And her neighbor his dogs were going insane. So he, went outside to see what was going on, and he found this huge, hairy creature that looked kind of like ape-like. He was so terrified he ran back inside and got his rifle and got off a few shots. But, he reported that he didn't think it hurt it, or if it did, it still ran off. And again, I chose these because, again, these were people that a lot of times wouldn't come forward. They didn't want their reputation, back in the 70s especially. It's still prevalent today, but not like it was back then. These people risked, their ridicule and that kind of thing, to come forward and talk about this. So it was incredible. And the cases, like I said, 276 or more reported cases in a year time in this small area. So, yeah, if you guys have any sources up there, and of course, we're not, seeing anything right now or getting a lot. I'm not getting a lot, of course, up there. I don't know because I'm not in that area. And, it's funny, I want to throw something in here. I don't know, have you guys seen this? There was a little cartoon that was sent to me on Facebook. And I've received a couple of articles from people saying, that there was a reduction in UFO sightings and reports. And, from my research, I haven't seen it. Matter of fact, I've increased in the last 3 years. But the cartoon was really cute. It showed it says the true reason why UFO reports, have, significantly been reduced. And it shows like 30 people sitting at an outside cafe and a UFO is hovering over their head about 40 feet and they're all looking down at their cell phone. And that was like, I mean, that was poignant to me. I mean, I tell people no one goes outside or looks up anymore. It's just us pray. It's like Matt hiking to the top of a 4-mile mountain, poking around in caves over the weekend. I mean, I'm a boots on the ground girl. I've raised horses for 40 years. I'm outside all the time, and all I'm doing is watching the sky. But there are so many people don't even look up anymore.
Angelia, I was talking with. And I've got to go back and check my notes who I was talking about this with, but it's somebody that does a lot of lectures about Bigfoot. And he said, he polled the audience. He said, how many of you have actually seen a Bigfoot? And he said about 60 out of 100 raised their hand yes. And out of that group, he said, all right, how many of you took the time to report it? And only 3 hands were left up. And that tells you that only about 5% of the Bigfoot sightings are reported. Now, if BFRO has got 35,000, that means there's 700,000 Bigfoot sightings that have really gone on during this time period. Now, and I'm always one to use if I can get my hands around some statistics, I'll try to at least apply them elsewhere, because the whole point was it's hard to report, and you kind of get worried about it. About how many UFO sightings have you had in Tennessee over, we'll say, since you've been around with MUFON? Is that a number that you could share with us?
Let me think about. So I've been on 5 years. I average 30 cases a month, do the math, plus my private research. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would
say
300 a year.
Let's say 500.
Minimum. If we're being conservative, 300 a year. I'm interviewing people almost every single day of the week except Saturday and Sunday. I take some time off. And what's interesting, you guys know me, Matt knows me, we're all kind of bodacious people. And, Dale laughs, we go anywhere, and he said he times me, he says it's usually less than 12 minutes before I bring up the UFO research. And, I laughed. I said, well, people might talk behind my back, but they don't say anything derogatory to my face. But you guys won't believe when I bring it up, I bet 95% of the people I bring it up with and our general friends or, Dale's in the music industry, this is interesting. I won't say who it was, but Dale was he does a charity event a couple of times a year, and we were actually down at WSM Radio doing a promo with Devin O'Day about the event. And there was a really famous country music singer there. I'll say it's a female. And she goes, I heard you're the UFO girl. And she actually, after the radio show, pulled me aside because she wanted to tell me what happened to her when she was young. So, I just feel like we're in an exciting time. More and more people are coming through. Like I said, I'm bodacious. I just put it out there everywhere. And it seems like if I stabilize people around me and, you present it in a sense of, credibility and confidence, people will just come on around. Dale tells a story. We were down in Georgia at actually a firearms forum, if you can believe that. It's just a weekend event where everybody brings guns and, you do target shooting and barbecue. And so it was probably Saturday night, and there's like 50 people sitting around a bonfire, and everybody's just kind of sitting there bored. Nobody was talking. And me, Matt, can you imagine this? I spoke up really loud, and I said, well, guys, does anybody here ever see UFOs or Bigfoot? And everyone moved their chair around me. Dale goes, I have never seen anything like that. He goes, Ange, you had people talking till like 3 a.m. And I told him, I said, I wasn't trying to, do anything. I was just really bored. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to get a conversation going on with something I like. So, and I want to tell one more story that I think you guys will really like. Probably about 3 weeks ago, I was driving over to Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, to see you guys. And an email came in, and, of course, I wasn't on my phone. Dale looked at it, and he goes, honey, you got an email from this woman. I think you should call her back. Well, it was this librarian in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Now, get this. A librarian in Lynchburg, Tennessee, found my name, and she invited me to speak at their civic group. That invitation meant more to me. You know, here's this little conservative hamlet, you know, Lynchburg, Tennessee, and she goes, "Oh, we've seen your work and we're so excited." And she goes, "Will you please come to speak with us, and we will give you travel expenses and buy your lunch." I said, "I will be there with bells on." And she goes, "We think so much of you. I'm going to give your name to all of my librarian friends." So I don't know. That right there just really meant the world to me. I mean, that kind of, you know, that to me says the times are a-changing. And so I haven't gone down to speak with them yet. It's coming up in a few weeks, so I can't wait to get down there. But she was so excited and open and receptive that, again, I don't see anything declining. And, you know, and like you said, if anything, the biggest education problem I have is, John, what you brought up, people don't know where to report these things. They really don't. I think they're hesitant.
They feel they don't have time, and or they're embarrassed. So I mean, you know, there are a lot of those reasons.
The fear of ridicule. That's a lot of them. It's definitely the fear of ridicule.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting. I bet with let's just say police officers. I go up to talk to police officers all the time just to feel them out. And, you know, I want to tell you today, I had a case, a young man that contacted me some time ago, and he owns a cattle farm. And he and a buddy were sitting in a pickup truck one evening just listening to the radio out in the cow pasture, and this triangular craft comes over their truck. The radio goes out. The battery seems to die. And they went on to have this encounter. I mean, this thing was like 200 or 300 feet over the truck. Some cattle mutilation situations showed up. Matt, we've been talking about that, about some horses that were killed. And long story short, I called the sheriff's department over there. And do you know the 911 controller called me back? I just got off the phone with him like a minute ago. He talked to me for a half hour. He was so fascinated. He goes, "I'm going to take your number." And I said, "Please do." And he said, you know, because I asked him, I said, "Was there any, you know, reports, 911 during that time?" Because I check it all out. And he said, "You know, there weren't. But I've had several of my police officers come in talking about some reports." And I said, "Oh, my goodness." I said, "Please give them my name." So I would have to say that 80% of law enforcement and these professionals are very open and curious and excited to talk to me when I tell them who, you know, I am. I mean, you know, and who I represent, because they are familiar with MUFON, most of them, and they're, you know, familiar with the TV show Hangar One and things that MUFON has done. So I don't know. I think it's an exciting time for all of us, especially in the field that we're in, you know.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the battery drainage. Okay, I've heard a lot of reports of people that have had, like around Bigfoot activity, that their equipment, the battery drains really quick. They can't really get no footage. I've actually got my trail camera set up in that area. Every time I go up there to check it, my phone can be at 40%, 30%, and it goes dead immediately, and I have to wait till I get back away from that area, usually plug it back up. But with the UFO sightings, is there a lot of sightings where people lose, like, their power on their cell phones and equipment, etc.?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we think it's a magnetic field disturbance, because sometimes if you can get involved in a high magnetic field, it can cause havoc with your equipment. We did a case, numerous, but the one that comes to mind, I had a case over in West Tennessee near Dresden. It's where I actually captured one of the greatest FLIR pictures I've ever had, the clearest entity. It was waving at us like trying to get our attention. We couldn't see it with the naked eye. That's why I said these things are, you know, we're going to have to change our current scientific paradigms. You know, we're trying to force this phenomena into the paradigm we want to be true, and it won't go away. That's part of my new book that's coming out, is about that. You know, early on as a young investigator, I kept having all these paranormal, and when I say paranormal, I don't mean a ghost. I just mean things that don't fit into our scientific, you know, paradigm right now. They just wouldn't go away. And so this case that we were investigating, Matt, And again, we've learned this. You should see my equipment bag. I've got extra batteries for everything. We went into this area. It was a beautiful sunny day, probably 70 degrees ambient temperature, no wind. The young man had a cheap IR camera, a game camera, that they kept having so much orbs and anomalous lights coming down in the woods around their house. He put this little cheap camera out there. Well, he had caught this incredible footage. It was of this little entity, and you can see it clear as day. I put this thing through everything I had, sent it to my optics people, my video people. This guy did not create this. He did not have the ability to. It would have taken, George Lucas light and magic. It was so clear. And it shows, the video shows this kind of rod of light. It's on my Parasheer Research page. If you guys want to go take a look at it, it's awesome. Just go to Parasheer Research and look under videos. I think it's under Transforming Lights. But anyway, it shows this rod of light. It touches the ground. It looks like this little entity walks across the ground. Guess what? You see it clear as day. It walks behind the tree, and a few seconds later, this orb of light shoots out. Well, we couldn't debunk it, so we took the whole team over there. Well, he took us around. This young man was so sweet. He took a day off work, and he took us to another area where it was an estuary where this river went through, and we've noticed there's a lot of activity sometimes, just like you guys with the Bigfoot around water. And we had, I bet our drone, we had a $3,000 drone, high-res camera, auto-stabilization. I love the thing. We put the thing up immediately and do all our topos, of the area and, kind of get our bearing. Well, my drone master sent the drone up. And, again, visualize this. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon, no wind. Beautiful sunny day. We sent it down this river. And about 200 feet down the river, we started getting messages like, collision, because it's got auto collision on it, so it'll avoid running into stuff. And it kept going, collision alert. And then it went magnetic field interference. It even told us that. We almost lost the drone. When we got it back, it was completely drained, and it's got auto return on it. These things do. They'll automatically reprogram them to auto return, before the battery drains. So when it reaches the point of no return, it will come back on its own and land exactly where we, took it off from. Well, just thank goodness I've got great technical guys, because Josh and my team got the drone back. That would have been awful if a $3,000 drone, went into the brink. And at that moment, every piece of equipment we had drained. Our phones drained, our field meters drained, I even have a bug detector that went dead in the car. So, we just laugh about it and put it in our field notes because it's good evidence. And we just, stopped, regrouped, had to go back to the house and plug things in and, recharged everything. But, yeah, luckily the car batteries, sometimes, we worry about that. The car batteries didn't. And we had a four-wheeler out that day and it didn't drain. But of our smaller equipment, yeah, we had a lot of stuff drained, and that happens. You don't know how, many times that happens, to my witnesses. And that's when I'm, you guys are educating me. I'm so happy to be with you guys. You're so much fun, doing the field work. That what I'm starting to see is that there truly are not only crossover sightings, but there's crossover evidence, meaning, some people see a Bigfoot and they go unconscious, or they have missing time, or they have, their car stalls out. So come on, guys, that means something. You can't throw that out. It's a definitive, magnetic field disturbance probably to some degree, which is indicative of, it's a whole different show, which is indicative of, I think some of the common denominators that I think what's going on. So, yeah, that's happening for sure in my cases. And, people are pretty freaked out about it.
So that's definitely the evidence there with the batteries being drained. Because a lot of the Bigfoot sightings and areas and stuff, all of a sudden when you're having activity, your equipment goes down. So that's definitely, that's pretty neat how the crossover evidence there works together.
And, Matt, why you're so important to me and, some of the other guys that I've met, first of all, I have, everybody listening, I have such high respect for Matt. every time he tells me his story, I laugh, and not in a disrespectful way, but I just can imagine him being out hunting, deer hunting, and this Bigfoot comes charging out and throws a stick at him. You know, to this day, I have this visual image. You know, he wasn't looking for that. You know, he wasn't wanting for that. He wasn't studying that. And, you know, it's just incredible, you know, what's happening to people. You know, people are really stressed out. And, you know, like you said, they really don't know why, you know, they don't know what's happening to them. And they feel I think one of the most horrible things I see in my witnesses, and I can imagine how you felt, is when, especially, can you imagine you're out on a dark road, you're driving along, you know, and, you know, most nights were cool. I like driving at night. But, you know, we've all been on a road sometime where we went, oh, God, I hope the car doesn't break down. You know, there's no telling what's out here. You know, I have so many witnesses. I had a woman that I interviewed the other night, and this woman is 50. And some of these memories are just coming back now, where she was driving home from her parents one night. Her nephew was in the car with her, multiple witnesses. She pulls up to this stop sign. The car goes dead. The next thing, this huge light goes. It was like Close Encounters. Remember that scene in Close Encounters where he's driving along and then the light just comes on the car? You know, this light just opens up on the car. And now imagine this, everybody, the audience. So they're sitting there, and out of this light, this being walks up to the car and starts to walk around the car. She goes, Ange, we were rolling the windows up. We were locking the doors. We were like, well, this can't be happening. And then eventually they kind of got frozen. And of course, these two, they cannot remember if there was missing time. So, yeah. Strange things are happening, and I've never realized till I met you guys and actually, you know, done more of the research on your side, how many things are so similar. Oh, and Matt, you helped me. I wanted to say one thing. This is why it's so important for all of us. You know, in the past, it just seems like everybody in these fields like Bigfoot, UFO, paranormal, it's like nobody wanted to get together and do joint research. I don't get that. You know, it's like, I'm on my team and you're on your team, and there's no crossing over, baby. And, you know, once I've gotten in there and talked, you know, spoken to some of the true, what I feel are true hunters and not just armchair warriors, I said, guys, when you're out there, do you ever see anomalous light? Like, and I'm not talking about way up in the sky. I'm talking about down in the tree canopy. And they stop and freeze and look at each other. So I know the answer was yes. And I said, guys, are you putting those in your field notes? Like, I'm not sure these people have field notes, but I said, you need to start keeping journals. And then they'll say, oh, yeah, we see these lights, but we didn't know what to do about it. We didn't. And I said, well, are you having what you feel is Bigfoot activity around that? And they go, yes. I said, well, guys, there's a connection. Come on. So, yeah, I've been shocked. I'm hoping, if nothing else, and I'm not hoping because I am doing it with you guys, is I'm excited about having this crossover research going on.
Yeah, it definitely helps out. I don't know why so many people are just stuck on one. They don't keep an open mind, and it causes a lot of arguments and drama. And of course, you know, we're not like that. We're out for the answers, the true answers. We want to know, and there's more to it than what people are trying to put, you know, out there. I always tried to take a scientific approach, but then as I've gotten through it longer, the more I've done it, the years, there's more to it than you can't really explain with science. And a lot of people...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, they just shy away, you know, once you start getting these weird things. Like, I had this girl, she hunts quite a bit, and she was telling me about a lantern light going through the woods that they had seen, and, you know, she didn't know what it was, and there's nobody, it's private property, nobody hunts, but it wasn't a lantern, and it just, like, disappeared. It just, like, vanished all of a sudden, and I've heard all kinds of...
That sounds like, that's like a standard ghost thing that we see. You know, the lantern. I mean, there's... Yeah. Famous one in Litchfield, yeah. Yeah, no, go ahead, Angelia. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
No, I'm sorry. We all get excited. And that's what I'm talking about. These things mean something. I just was stubborn. Like I said, I was raised by a science professor at Vanderbilt. And, you know, he's passed away now when I was young, but I think he was so hard on me growing up. And every day I'm thankful that he was, because I really had to make my mark, and I had to intellectually stand my ground and know what I was talking about scientifically. And, you know, I told some of these old guys, you know, when I say, oh, if it doesn't fit into our model, we're going to throw it out. I said, wonder if Copernicus did that, or Einstein. I said, have you heard of being creative? I said, when something in your actual observation goes again, and it keeps happening with you personally, I've seen this, experienced it, and it happens with 2,500 people that I've, you know, interviewed, all of us are not delusional or crazy. That's ridiculous. And so it's amazing to me how much good research in the past has been thrown out just because it did not fit into what they wanted to be true. And I told these guys, I mean, I hammered them. I said, you guys have been doing the same old tired research for 50 years. And I said, I'm not talking about throwing out science. We use every tool at our disposal. But I said, when a mystery comes about that can't be explained in the way that we've been taught, and it's not an anomaly, it didn't happen just one time, and we weren't on drugs, and we weren't drinking, and the witnesses weren't, then we have to be brave enough to put on a different hat and go, we don't know everything, imagine that, and we have to include that in our research. I mean, it means something, and I was just stubborn enough. I wouldn't, you know, I would not weed it out of my research. I just wouldn't.
That's a good point. A lot of people are scared to step outside that box. They don't want to step outside that.
And, you know, well, I get it because, you know, they, especially if you're in the scientific community, this is what's so crippling. You know, if you step out of that box, you can't get funding for your research. Y'all think about that. I know I've got people in the actual scientific, you know, universities. Well, if you step out of that just a little bit, you can't get money for your funding and your research, and you don't have a job. That is horrible. Our model has changed.
Angelia, I have proof of that because when I was finishing my PhD and I was teaching, and I was going to do an ESP experiment with some students to teach statistics, and the dean called me up and told me that if I did that, I would not have a job at the end of the semester. And that was before I knew that you should sue people for that. Otherwise, I would own that entire place right now. But you know, it is dangerous. The National Science Foundation is dangerous because they will not promote anything other than, you know, have we found another butterfly? That's all they want to. That's all they want to do, and that's why I have
and that's why
a problem with them.
Yeah, and that's why our research. That's why having credible researchers outside of that is so important. That's why. You know, I've spent so much time building my credibility. It's not for my ego. It's certainly not to make money, but it's actually so when we talk about this stuff, you know, it can put us on the map, just like people like you guys. I mean, and people are listening. People, you know, people are not dumb. You know, people know what's happened to them. They know if they've seen what they thought it was a ghost. They know if they've seen, you know, humanity has survived because we have good instincts. And we all know, all of us, we get that creepy feeling up our back, our hair stands up. We all know when something weird is happening. I tell my team, I tell my witnesses, I say, listen to that. Don't ignore that. If you feel that scared, get the heck out of Dodge, you know. So, that's why I just really pummel this, you know, and I'm excited. You know, I just don't even, you know, you guys are going to laugh. Can I tell this story? John, I want to tell this story because it's going to go off with your PhD thing. Probably about 15, 17 years ago, I got invited to Vanderbilt to the astronomy club. Well, they were going to have a lecture that night on the possibility of extraterrestrial life. So I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going. So here, little blonde me goes in there. There's probably about 50 people in this room. They're having dinner, and there's only one table left where this one older gentleman is sitting there. So I go over there and put my tray down, and I thought, wonder why no one's sitting, you know, eating with him. He looks at me and goes, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm Angelia. And he goes, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm into UFO research. And he looked at me, and I noticed that people were creeping over close to us. And he goes, well, I don't believe in that stuff. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, well, I am an astrophysicist, and I am the lead in redshift. Research. And I proceeded to tell him what that was because I knew. And so he kind of backed up a little bit, and I said, well, that's interesting. I said, have you looked at all the data concerning UFO sightings? And he goes, well, I've seen TV. And I said, no, sir. I'm not talking about TV, and people are getting closer, packing around. I said, I'm talking about actual reports from trained witnesses, astronauts, pilots, ground proof, radiation traces, radar traces. Have you looked at all that? Have you spoken to any of the credible people? And he said, no. And I said, well, sir, I don't understand you. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, you're a scientist, right? He goes, yeah. I said, well, my father's a scientist, and he taught me that a scientist looks at every piece of relevant data before coming to a conclusion, and you've done none of that. And, guys, I thought he was going to hit me. His face turned blood red. Well, at this point, someone down spoke up, and he goes, oh, said something. I said, well, who are you? And he goes, well, I'm Professor so-and-so in this department in DNA research. I said, that's awesome. Have you read Francis Crick's work? He goes, who is Francis Crick? I said, are you kidding me? He discovered DNA. And Francis Crick actually wrote a book called Panspermia. He believed that the helixes and the design of DNA were so similar and yet so complex, he was almost certain it did not originate on this planet. And about that time, the whole room erupted into chaos. I mean, really, this older guy I thought was going to get me. Well, after that, when I wrote several of my articles, I said, we make progress one funeral at a time. That's how it happens. Because fast forward 15 years, I got invited back to that same group. I go walking in, and this young man, he comes up to me, he goes, I know who you are. I went, oh, God, I have a reputation. He goes, you're one of the only people, and especially a woman, that took out Professor so. I'll never forget that. It was a compliment. He meant it as a compliment. And he goes, you're going to love me. And I said, why is that? And he goes, extraterrestrial life. I'll give you any odds it's there. And that was an example of what's happening in our society. I mean, some of those older generations, I really do have compassion. They had spent their whole life doing a certain kind of research. Can you imagine your whole life doing a certain kind of research and a new discovery comes about and it just totally disregards your whole life work as wrong? I mean, they were stuck in that old paradigm. And then we get this younger generations coming forward that's reared on Star Trek and, which I think is some kind of, I think a lot of this is programming for the public in a good way, to kind of open their minds up. And then you get that new attitude. And, he and we spoke after that quite a bit. And so that's reminiscent, of what happened to you. I mean, in the academic, part of our world. And so I tried to stay out of that, meaning it was so restrictive. And I thought, can you imagine the professor and how he handled those students? Oh, my, you're talking about repressed curiosity about life. And what's so astounding to me is an astrophysicist has a great grasp at the immensity of our universe. I mean, really, endless, 280 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Right now they estimate 100 million planets. And you really think arrogant enough that we are the only things there? That is just absurd to me. I mean, that's totally absurd.
Well, what is your opinion on Bigfoot Sasquatch? Do you believe it's an alien, or do you believe that possibly we are the alien life form here on Earth? What is your opinion on the whole Bigfoot? Do you believe, if it... Go ahead.
I could have my own personal opinion, but, guys, we have to remember, I want to put this in context. That's just kind of like asking in a certain way, and it's not a derogatory, it's a great question. But, people ask me, are the aliens good or bad? I go, are humans good or bad? And I said, the only reason I say that is I want you to just look at our planet. I want you to look at how many different kinds of humans, our colors, our hair, life, from rattlesnakes to bunny rabbits to trees, to things that live in arsenic. Then you look at our culture, how many different cultures, how many different political beliefs, religious beliefs. Look at the complexity of that going on. You see what I'm saying? Then let's
Right.
add in, science. Let's add in science now. And, we're starting to see, I told one of my students, or one of the people I was training, I said, let's jump forward to black holes. Why do people think that a black hole can only, or let's just say a singularity perhaps, can exist only in outer space? Now, a huge one, absolutely. But, Einstein and Rosen, there was an Einstein-Rosen bridge, almost like a wormhole that they theorized. And this is all current science. Why do people not think one of those doorways could exist on our planet? Now let's go forward a little bit. We have bats that navigate with radar. We have dolphins. I've actually been diving with dolphins, and you should hear them hit you with their sonar. Under the water, they go, and, they're feeling you all the way through. Well, the more I learn, and Matt, you saw one, you felt it. I tell people, just because these things might be interdimensional, I almost hate to say that. I don't want to sound woo-woo. Or, just because these things might have a different genetic makeup than we do, it doesn't mean they're not very real. It doesn't mean they don't show up in our reality. There could be numerous reasons why we have this paranormal component around it. I mean, look at an octopus. An octopus can land on a rock and change its color immediately. We don't think that's magic. Matter of fact, if you guys haven't read it, most scientists think that octopus, if there were any creature on the planet, they could be aliens. Their DNA is so alien in their structures. But so to me, it's just not far-fetched. I think Bigfoot is very real. I think there could be a multiplicity of things going on. I think there could be some that are stranded here, maybe. This is just my opinion. They live here all the time, maybe jam out on the cave systems. People don't realize, just like that cave that you found up there, look at that. It was cool. It had a water supply there. And, then we could possibly have entities, proto-human, or similar to proto-human, that, their perceptual abilities may be different than ours, their DNA structure. Maybe they can jam out and actually, just like, bats can sense, with their radar, or certain animals, they can see in a different visual spectrum than we can, or sense or hear like a dog. Sometimes I think these beings, they really can perceive these doorways or portals that may exist. And again, these doorways and portals may move, just like the magnetic field of the earth changes. And they may be able to jam out on them. They might be able to, sense where they are. And, they can go from one realm to another. I think what I've learned about science, anything is possible. I mean, almost anything. Even our physics, you look at, I'm sorry?
Oh, I got to interrupt. Okay, you're talking about all that? You want to know something that's really strange? Today and last night, I have been studying with the animals, like with the sonar, and like, for example, fox they use the Earth's magnetic field to hunt with. They
absolutely
actually zone in. They can tell their distance, like with the snow, the mice and stuff that's underneath it. They use the Earth's magnetic field, and they can zone in and tell the distance of the mouse and everything just from that. And I was looking at all the different kind of wild or crazy, I mean, it's awesome that these bats and the dolphins and like the fox have all got these special abilities. And it's weird because you brought all that up, and I was just researching on that last night and today, and it hit me. I was like all these animals have this, why can't the Sasquatch or Bigfoot? I'm sure it's probably got to have something similar. And a lot of the food comes from it. And that's pretty wild.
And those are things that, nobody questions sonar and dolphins or radar and bats or, just look at things, how a hawk will hunt. I mean, that's incredible. Their vision, their acuity and their visual skills is amazing what they can do. So to me, this is just that, it's not that far-fetched, especially, now that I've read through thousands and thousands and thousands of documented cases of people coming forward, especially hunters as yourself that are not storytellers. They're usually good old boys, got my gun since I was 4 years old, I'm out here hunting, and I don't believe in any of that stuff, just like you. And when they come forward, I love those witnesses. I've had hunters that hunting was their life. They love being in the woods. And I've had a few that will not go back in the woods. They're so scared. And for these guys, 6'3", gun-toting guys that tell me to start shaking, something happened to these people that wasn't made up. And so, I think it's exciting now. There's no convincing me. These things they exist. Now we go on to step 2. Well, if they exist, how do they exist? And, step 2, you have cases where I love the ones that have been in the snow where they track them, to the middle of a pasture, and then the footprints just disappear. Well, wait a minute. If something happened there, unless someone's playing an incredible prank, but how would they even do that? You would have to suspend something, someone from a rope, to not have any other footprints, going around. So, I think we just all have to go to step 2.
Well, the answer is they just jump into a portal.
Yeah, or a doorway.
Walk into a portal. That's the only way you can get away. Because I was actually going to write a Bigfoot column about what happens when footprints suddenly end. But then all of a sudden, after I read some things, and I want to address an issue that we covered a little bit ago. It was about, where's Bigfoot from? I am entirely satisfied. I've read Melba Ketchum's paper, and I think anybody that just says it's a bunch of hogwash is stupid. And I've talked to her, and she's got just complete proof that Bigfoot, the mother's DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, is human female, primarily Middle Eastern and European, and the father is of novel or unknown origin. And her samples, her 68 samples date the beginning of the species between 20,000 years ago and 13,000 years ago. And my goodness, that is mighty. As Angelia, we all got a book. In my upcoming book, that is a very, very tight window that ends right at the last great ice age. That all of a sudden the Bigfoot population is ready to go right when the ice age ends. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of like the big the 6 mile wide meteor that extinguished the dinosaurs, about half of them within 30 seconds. It's all kind of becoming clear. It was pretty convenient.
Yeah.
It sure is when things happen at the same time and you have some pretty good science backing it all up. You need to like as you said, you got to you got to start pulling things together from a lot of different places. And when this thing hits, because we're about 90 days away from getting this out. It's 100 pages. It's a short book, but there's just too much good stuff not to put in there. And then when you factor in Melba Ketchum's work, and I don't care what anybody says, she's one of the nicest ladies, and she's been rode hard, put up wet, and beat up for her great work that nobody wants to believe. And I certainly know. I certainly know how to read a research paper, and it's a great paper. And she just said, I just have samples, and I just ran them. I just worked with what I had.
Bless her heart, I know. And that's what, she should be complimented. When my phone was tapped years ago and my mail was open, I was complimented. Because if you're really stupid and crazy, why would anybody do that? And, just like Copernicus and all these great scientists, they were all kicked to the curb. And, you know what I mean? Everybody, when there's a paradigm shift, everybody has to go crazy for a while. So, it's terrible, but it's just kind of the price we all pay, especially all of us that sit on the edge of things over here. That kind. And so to me, I'm excited at this point. I was telling Matt was talking about some leads that he had about something. I won't talk about the specifics, but, I am a boots on the ground. I'm a show me girl. So, and that's why, all of us, what I call boots on the ground investigators, meaning that we're out there. I'm like, let's go out here and see, if we can interact with this phenomena, because, you guys asked my opinion, but the best information that I've gotten is when you actually experience it yourself. That night when my team was out and this UFO came down and hovered over us, guys, they knew we were there. It was completely silent. The thing had anti-grav generators, or it couldn't have sat there. It was completely clear, a couple of 1,000 feet. We could see windows on the side. And after we saw it, 30 minutes later, this orb shows up over the trees going back and forth, just like it was, checking us out. That's just one example. So, when you've been out and, or like the entity we saw out in the woods and got a picture of, that was real. That thing wasn't evil. There are dark things. There are bad things. There's rattlesnakes. There's things that will hurt you, but there's a lot of things that won't. And just like that entity that was kind of trying to get our attention, it seemed to be as curious about us as we were about it. It didn't attack us. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't do anything. So, that's what's so exciting, about going forward is, look, we're at the forefront of this research. I actually, people know me as UFO Girl, and I don't know if you guys saw this on my Facebook page. I know y'all checked something out, but there's something here that I wanted to share with you that I thought was interesting, and just to tell you how the times are changing. And Matt, so anyway, you guys know that I ride horses, and I have a locker at my barn where, we keep our stuff, and I went out to get my bridles out one day, and there was a magazine stuffed into my locker. And believe it or not, it was a current National Geographic, and on the cover it says, "We are not alone." And it says, "New discoveries reveal it's almost certain we're not alone." And that was on the cover of National Geographic. So, John, I think you'll like this. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of static.
No, I'm sorry. I was plugging in. Okay,
I'm back now. You're talking about that article that said we may not be alone.
Yeah, and I wanted. This was National Geographic, and I put in. I actually wanted to do a post about it because, I said times are changing. For us old hunters, these new articles are both validating and somehow insufferable. I've been interviewing incredible people for going on 40 years now, and at this point, I've spoken to 2,500 individuals. I just want to tell you what I wrote here real quick. It says, this 2,500 was adjusted the way to hoaxes, misidentifications, and psychological issues. We've known how immense this universe really is for a very long time. Did the mainstream just wake up out of a coma? The same people who used to make fun are now calling me and my fellow investigators for answers. We're booked everywhere for radio shows, conferences, speaking engagements. We're so busy, we can't keep up. I'm glad to see these articles come forward. Maybe it will help the general public who has never really wrestled with this issue. But for all of us who have really seen things that would terrify good people who no one would help, endured those cold, long nights just to try to get that rare picture, we all smile a little and say, "We told you so." And that's why I think right now being in our positions is really exciting, because I really feel like we're at the threshold of a lot of things tearing open here.
Well, I saw that, and I said to myself, that is the single most preposterous, embarrassing thing about science I have ever read. UFOs have been around since the dawn of time. And if they have a headline like that, they all ought to, everybody that wrote that article should be fired, and the NSF should give up all their grant money. I think that is the stupidest. I'm sorry for saying it, but you got me on a soapbox now. That is the stupidest thing I ever heard. We might not be alone.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
insufferable to, and it, like you said, it's denigrating to, all these people that just keep coming forward. And now that I'm getting educated and get to hang out with, people like Matt and, I can't wait till, I really want us to be able to go out. I'm even buying me some snake chaps, Matt. So, and I told Matt, people don't realize that, when we're out hunting, when I'm out, we're covered in insects and ticks, and I told someone the other day I was out training horses and sat down on the ground about 2 weeks ago. I told Matt this story and just actually was relaxing a minute, and I woke up and a 4.5-foot chicken snake crawled over my legs. So, no, people don't realize, like, Matt hiked up that mountain the other day. How long did that take you, Matt?
Oh, gosh. Going up there, I was exhausted. I had to stop quite a few times. I started out as probably around 1:30, and I got up there. I think it was around in between 4 and 5.
That's what I'm talking about. I want everybody on this show, listening to this show, to think about that. He hiked up a mountain 4 miles to find this cave and do research. Most people, I told him I'm in really good shape, but after probably 2 miles, he would have probably had to drag my body behind him, and I'm in pretty good shape. I was proud of it. But people don't understand the rigors of actual research. I mean, we have to, if we're going to, especially when the weather warms up and we're going to do research, we got to worry about snakes and cottonmouths and, and all kinds of other crazy stuff. I mean, Matt, you're in a different area than me. You have more wildlife, but even over here we have bobcats, and I was out working horses about 6 months ago, and there was a mountain lion in our pasture. So
that's awesome. That is awesome.
Really, a mountain lion, not a bobcat. A mountain lion was like 100 feet away from me or something. So people don't realize, they go, oh, why can't people just find one of these things? Well, guys, if these males, let's just say the males, they're 8-9 feet tall. I don't know, Matt, how much would they weigh? 800 pounds, 1,000 pounds? I mean, my horse weighs 1,250 pounds, and these things are supposed to be huge. And they're covered in hair, and they've been jamming on the outdoors genetically their whole life. Us tracking them is like us going after a 757, aircraft, or something. I mean, they are so adept at their environment and what they can do. I mean, and look, they have hair to protect them. I mean, the reason they probably stink, I can imagine, that could be a natural insect repellent. Who knows? We're subject to like being eaten up with mosquitoes and ticks and snake bit, and so it's really funny to me when people go, oh, just go out there in the woods and find one. Well, have you ever been out in the woods? And even if we go in the winter time, you'll get frostbite if you're not clothed right, and so people don't even, you can talk about that, Matt, all the difficulties of actually doing true research on this.
Yeah, like the woods around here, this area, and where I had went, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where this little girl told me about this track her and her dad had found down on the river. I got the map out and I was looking, and there is so much wilderness in that area. It'd be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I've been researching for 20-plus years. I've only seen one mountain lion my entire time researching, and that was outside of Gadsden, Alabama. But if that lets you know, I mean, mountain lions are seen pretty frequent, and I've only seen one in 20-plus years.
Yeah, and we're outside all the time. And Matt, how many times, I've been out training horses in the woods 40 years. How many times have you seen the carcass of a dead bear?
I've never seen one. I've never seen the carcass of a dead bear, and I'm outside 4 days a week, 5 days a week. That's what I'm saying. The only time I've ever even seen a deer carcass was a hunter shot a deer, and he couldn't find it, and evidently it lived long enough to run on our property, and it died on our property. And we found it, but it was gone in a week. You know what I'm saying? Yep.
Even the bones were gone after that, because I left it there and just went as an experiment. So people go, oh, why? If they die, you should find a body. Well, you don't even find a body of a mountain lion. Can you imagine? I've never found anything like that. I mean, now and then I find some bird feathers, where it looks like something got killed.
Well, a body out in the wilderness, a carcass will be gone within a week. And that's with, you got not the insects attack it. You've got, the insects, you got the maggots, then you've got your little scavenger animals, that carry off the stuff. and it's gone within a week. If it's out in the wilderness, it's usually gone within a week. A week's time, it's gone.
If it lasts that long, you know, I mean, so that's what I'm saying. I mean, the general public, and you know, they really, a lot of people just, I don't mean this derogatory in any way, but they really just don't realize that, you know, that you don't really see these carcasses, these bodies like that. And, you know, Matt, you brought up something the other night. You know, Matt and I talk just personally because we jam out on our research. And he was talking about, and guys, you guys don't know how much time we spend in research, just like he was researching, you know, animals, their sonar and whatever. He was talking about that, and Matt, you take over. You were talking about the bears and their odor. I want you to talk about that. That was interesting.
Oh, yeah, how a lot of people, I've had a lot of people, anytime I've seen posts on these Facebook Bigfoot groups saying that they smelled an odor or they smell something nasty outside. I see a lot of comments saying, oh, that was a bear and all this, but I've been out in the woods and I've tracked bears. I've got pictures of them. I've been within feet of bear that I have tracked. I've got a fresh set of tracks, and I have tracked them all the way down, and my daughter can attest to it. I've been right up on them, and I've never smelled an odor of a bear. And everybody goes, oh, that's a bear, you know, that these people are smelling. I mean, unless they get into something that is more or less, you know, like some garbage, or if there's like a sulfur area, if there's a lot of sulfur in that area and they're down in a hole and it's got that red clay and sulfur, I can see them smelling like that. But in general, black bears don't stink. They do not. Talking to the Tennessee wildlife official guy, they had a black bear thing over here at the visitor center, the Cumberland Gap Park, and I was talking to him, and he's an older guy, and I asked him, I said, so you've dealt with a lot of black bears? He said, yeah, I've relocated quite a few. I said, well, how many have you relocated? He said, from the time that from the Kentucky state line to the Georgia state line, all the way up down East Tennessee, he relocated over 240 black bears. And I looked at him, and I was being serious. I said, how many of them stunk? And he looked at me weird, like I was crazy or something. He goes, what do you mean? I said, how many of them had a nasty odor? He goes, none. He said they don't have a nasty smelling odor. And I was like, thank you. Okay. So, but I see a lot of people that try and say that it's usually a black bear that these people are smelling. But a lot of times it's not, because unless a black bear in general has gotten into something or done something, they don't have an odor. Now, the males during, I think it's May and June, they have a little bit of a musky odor that they get on their top of their head and their back of their neck. That's during the mating season. And they'll rub it on turkeys, stuff like that. But that's only just a short period of time. But in general, black bears don't stink.
Right. And I just wanted Matt to tell that story because, you know, again, I'm just new to this, the Bigfoot stuff. But, you know, you hear people go, oh, they just saw a bear. Well, you know what? You know, it's interesting. Even this, you know, when I told you I saw that mountain lion a little bit ago, I had been working horses around some cattle. And I was training one of my geldings, and I was on my mare, who's just a quintessential cutting horse. She just loves cows. And when she's working a cow and they get too aggressive, she'll go, and she'll make this really aggressive noise. Well, when we were coming back, I was hot. The horses were tired. We were all, you know, and paying half attention. Well, all of a sudden my mare just plants, and she goes, well, I thought, God, did the cows get out? Well, she was blowing at that mountain lion. And you know, it's amazing what they're aware of. And, you know, again, that mountain lion wasn't that far away from me. And, you know, again, they're, you know, my horses have a certain smell, but they don't stink. They don't have an odor, you know, like you're talking about. I couldn't sense anything about that cat in there. And, you know, one of my family members actually said, oh, that wasn't a mountain lion. You know, it was amazing. Just like when people said, oh, you saw a bear. I said, listen, I've been outside 40 years. When I tell you I saw a mountain lion, I saw a mountain lion. And, it's funny, 2 weeks later they got him on the game cam. But until they got it on the game cam, even my family members did, some of the guys didn't want to believe me, that I saw a mountain lion. I was like, come on. And that's what I'm saying. Those of us that are outside, we know what we see. If that had been a bear charging out of those bushes, you would have known that was a bear.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. A bear won't throw
how many bears have you known have thrown a stick at you?
Exactly.
That just makes me crack up.
Yep, exactly.
Well, they say you can train bears, so, maybe someone trained them to throw a stick. Little joke there. Just a little joke.
There you go. We have a trained stick-throwing bear. I love it.
Yeah.
It's
but
so
yeah, I
say that out loud.
And these are out in the wild. I have tracked them to the tree they've been in. I've tracked them within feet. I usually don't get that close to some of the mamas with the cubs that I've tracked up to. But I've got pictures I can prove I've been right up to them.
Right.
None of them, I've never smelled an odor with any of them. Nothing like what I smelled whenever I had my encounter. And everybody always wants to say on these other people, they're talking about they smell a nasty odor outdoors and stuff. But I've never smelled an odor from a bear. Not a nasty odor, nothing. Now, if they've been digging around in a garbage can, I'm sure that they probably will smell. But unless they get into something, but just in general, black bears don't stink. And I can attest that because I've been right up on them in the wild. Not just one, but many. And I hang out with people that hunt. I've been around the dead carcasses of bears. I hunt. Well, I used to hunt. And I can tell you, bears that have just been killed, stuff like that, I've picked up their paws, I've handled them, and no odor. So, like I said, unless they get into something,
well, there you go.
Smell.
There you go. So I love that story. Matt, I just love it. And I'm not laughing at you, but
great.
I still have this visual image of you, young man, out there with your gun, getting ready, thinking a big couple of bucks are charging through, and here comes this Bigfoot out and throws a stick at you. I think that's indelibly imprinted on my mind. It's my favorite, one of my favorite stories.
But the trauma that it put on me, because I'm staring at something that first I'm scared, but I'm confused because I'm trying to figure out what this thing is. What is this that is, making this noise? It's got this smell, and it's got this scream, and I'm confused because I don't know what it is, And it definitely, it's changed my life forever. But, yeah, and then when it threw that stick, of course.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, of course it did. And, guys, I don't know how much time we have left, but Matt, you and I had one story I wanted to just share with you about the UFO connections. And this
we
is
got
so
close to
interesting.
15 minutes. We're okay.
Oh, good. Well, on September 1st, 1973, in Penn Township in Pennsylvania, during, the research with Stan Gordon was carrying on, this case was really interesting to me. There were 3 women. They were traveling on a country road. There was, 3 of them. When they watched this UFO, touch down in this pasture, the women were so curious, they were freaked out, but they were all there in the car, and, with numbers, they got a little bit brave, and they slowed the car down and, came to a stop so they could watch the thing, and they could see it really clear. And they said while they were watching, a door appeared along the seams of the side of the craft, and some steps actually came out. Then they said the most bizarre thing happened. 2 very tall, hairy-like creatures came down the steps and then continued off into the nearby woods. When they saw that was the last thing they saw of the creatures, and at that point they got so frightened, they sped away, and they went into town and made a report to the sheriff's department. They weren't drinking, they weren't anything. So, I'm starting to come across a lot of cases like that. They literally saw a UFO. They just didn't see a UFO land over the trees and then see Bigfoot over here. They saw the UFO land, a door open, some steps come down, and 2 Bigfoot-like creatures climbed down and went off into the woods. Like, why would you make that up? Especially in 1973. And this was when they had over 276 sightings in that area. I thought that was a really cool case or, event there. So who knows?
Well, now that you mentioned
stranger and stranger.
That you mentioned the stairs, have you ever heard of the mysterious staircases in the middle of the woods?
I have not. Educate me on it. That is something new. I thought I'd about heard all this weird stuff, but no, tell me this. What is this about?
Supposedly in certain areas of the wilderness that people will come up on just a set of steps that's out in the middle of the woods, and it could be from an old house or whatever, but I've heard a lot of, I was listening to a lot of different reports on different stuff, and they talk about North Carolina, a set of steps. There was no foundation for a house was ever there or anything, and a park ranger was told not to talk about it, not to touch him, not to go near it. And whenever they trained other park rangers, they told them, don't ask about it, don't talk about it, don't say nothing about it. But supposedly there's steps out in the middle of the woods in certain areas in these national parks. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I'd like to come across that set.
Something
me,
like
I
that.
would
Oh, God, yeah. And what's interesting, what people don't realize, you guys probably do, but, Teddy Roosevelt was a big hunter. And supposedly one of his friends, I think it was really Teddy Roosevelt, but had a Bigfoot sighting. And what people don't realize, during the time of his presidency, Teddy Roosevelt is the one that created all the national parks and the national forests. Isn't that amazing? And you're talking about timing, John. A lot of these national forests, people are not even allowed in. They're restricted. Now, everybody's smart out there, think about that. And then you wonder why some of these national parks were chosen for the locations that they were, going on with what Matt was talking about. I even wonder about places like Stonehenge and, all these different places, like there's a lot of those mounds and stone formations just here in the U.S. You can go find them, like Standing Stone State Park is here in Tennessee, I think is the name of it. We drove up there on the motorcycle one day. It's pretty incredible. Well, you wonder what they were marking. It seems like they were marking some kind of area there, and then we get back to what we were talking about with portal areas, and It's amazing. Isn't that interesting that a lot of those are in national parks that are owned by the federal government, and, man, you cannot get in trouble in there. If you go in there and, they won't hardly give you permission to do anything. The other day I was on the Natchez Trace, and I was investigating a UFO sighting, and I stopped one of the park rangers, and he goes, you can't stop your car here, so you have to go on. He wouldn't even talk to me. And I've known people that have gotten in big trouble, in national parks because they were trying to camp, or they got, by accident, they got over in a place they weren't supposed to be. And, you could be subject to, like, a lot of criminal liability. So I think it's interesting that a lot of our state parks are built around some of these unusual places. If you listen to David Paulides' work, with his Missing 411, his early work was all about Bigfoot. I went back and read all of his stuff, like the Hoopa Project and stuff. Isn't it amazing that some of the highest degree of disappearances that he reports on as a police officer with credibility are in national parks and forests? Come on. I mean, that's amazing. So it's almost like you think maybe these areas, they know about them, somebody does. They've roped them off to some degree so they have, control over it, so they can, they can pass these laws so, people can't go around them, past or, at least investigate, not in any serious way. So, yeah, I mean, and then you brought it up that those stone steps were in a park. And, that brings me one last thing. One of my friends, his daughter is in the Air Force, I believe. I'll have to correct myself if I'm wrong. And she was doing a survivalist training in Washington State. She had a textbook. This is one of my co-investigators on my team. He said that she wrote him and said that one of the chapters in her book, it was wild, animal, or how to survive in nature. And there was a section on wild animals to avoid. Guess what was listed? People, guess what was listed? Sasquatch.
Yep. I was going to say people.
Oh my God, it made me start laughing. I was like, that is like in a training manual.
Yeah, I wonder what the protocol is. Come across one.
I know, it's crazy.
I wonder what their protocol is.
Matt, what'd you say?
Oh, I got something to share with y'all. I think I may have told Matt. I don't know that I've told you, Angelia. We were doing caricatures at the Independence Mall in Wilmington over Christmas, and some fellow brought his dad. The fellow was about 40. His dad was about 75, 80. He was bringing in, he got a caricature for his dad, and he said he was a park ranger. And I said, you ever seen Bigfoot? He said, well, I haven't. But you know they train us on it. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, every year when we do our continuing education training, we have at least 90 minutes of Bigfoot 101 training. So he pulls out his phone, pulls out the email, and it goes down, and it's Mark Miller, what's his name, from Ohio Night Stalkers, doing the training on Bigfoot 101 for the park rangers, Carolina. All right, and I got one other thing, but now I got one other thing I have to say, and then y'all can ostracize me for the rest of your lives. Do you know, this is a joke. Now, do you know why they will not let you touch those stone stairs?
Why
they won't let you touch them because they want to get the fingerprints off of them, because whoever built them, they're not handicapped accessible.
Right.
Nobody is going to like that. But I've been dying to tell that joke for 15 minutes, and I finally said, well, if I can do the park ranger thing, you see, I'm always the least funny person, but I do get laughs because my jokes are so not funny. I'm sorry. I'm being terrible.
And you know what?
I
want to just throw out to both of y'all in the audience. If you guys have not read George Knapp's Hunt for the Skinwalker, get that book and read it now. I mean, you will not, our audience, you guys, you won't be able to put it down. You talking about some incredible crossover stuff. That poor family, that's the farm that Bigelow bought finally. I mean, that book is one of the most excellent, well-written books. It will captivate you guys out there. So everybody check it out, because it's all about what we're talking about here.
Is this the ranch out in Utah?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Hunt for the Skinwalker. Matt, you should get it. You'll love it. You won't be able to put it down.
I've got a
Skinwalker. George Knapp.
I got a 2,000-word email from the current owner, all about it. It's frightening.
Right.
Yeah, he just happened to be working at a hosting company that I used, and he saw all my paranormal websites, and he just wouldn't stop talking. It was great. Then he sent me this email. I'll always cherish that. Yeah, it's got some real iffy stuff. You know what? We got 2 minutes, and I want to say this has been the most fun we could ever have, Angelia, because it was you.
Oh,
so
I love
I'm going to let you. You're welcome. I'm going to let you do the first plug, then Matt does the second plug, and then I'll say au revoir until next time. So, Angelia, what do you have to plug? What do you plug?
Just nothing I have to plug is if there's anybody out there that's had a UFO sighting, please call me and talk to me. It'll be a relief off of you. You can reach me numerous different ways. You can reach me at MUFON of Tennessee on Facebook, MUFONoftennessee.com. You can, if you don't want to make an official report, you can reach me through my private research group, which is Parasheer Research, and that's on Parasheer Research on Facebook, ParasheerResearch.com, and I do have a private page, Angelia Sheer, on Facebook. And so, again, I just urge everybody, the only plug I have is I just want to hear from you. If you've had a case, call me. And, Matt, it was great to be with you. And, Dr. John, thank you for you guys inviting me on.
Absolutely. We love having you. Look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Matt, what you got to plug?
I just the same as always. Definitely, if you had any type of encounter or anything, I don't care if it's Bigfoot, Dogman, Mothman, anything out of the unordinary, then shoot me a message, Matthew Delph, Facebook, or go to MECRO, Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization, and send a message. You just let me know. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank
you,
great
guys.
to talk to you. I was just thinking, well, either they can contact you like that, or they can write a book with you with their Mothman story in it, like I did. So, I'm sorry, I'll be quiet. I have the world's worst jokes, but thank you both. Angelia, it's wonderful to have you on here. Matt, it's great having you here, and Bigfoot and Company will return next week, and Matt, our guest is next week
Lori Wade from the FRO.
BFRO. I mean, the guests just don't get it. Just don't get any better. And then Angelia is going to be on Scarycast, not this week, but next week. She will be ushering in the weekend of the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. She will be the first event, and that will be next Thursday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, on Scarycast. And then we'll all head to Georgia. Take care. I love all of you. Goodbye. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.